Welcome back to another wonderful episode of Success Innovation. Today, I'm so happy to bring to you another wonderful individual to interview. The episode is called Navigating Between Academia and Industry. It is with Skye Edwards that we have this wonderful discussion. She's the current SHPE president at UCSD Student Chapter from year 2019 to 2020 school year. We dive deep into how she managed to go ahead and discover bioengineering, what she's encountered, and how SHPE has definitely helped her guide her career, and how she managed to discover her true passion. I want you to welcome Skye Edwards to Success Innovation for this wonderful conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Thank you. Welcome back to another wonderful Success Innovation episode. Today, I'm really happy and excited to bring to you another wonderful individual, fantastic young lady. Her name is Skye Edwards. Skye Edwards is a bioengineering student at University of California, San Diego, otherwise known as UCSD. As you know, it is my alma mater, so I'm really happy about bringing this episode to you. And she is currently the president of UCSD's SHPE Student Chapter. And as you know, SHPE stands for Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, and it is a nationwide organization. Welcome, Skye Edwards to Success Innovation. Thank you so much for being with me today. How are
Of course,
you?
thank you. Pretty good.
Fantastic.
Surviving this school
So
year.
yeah, exactly, surviving. We were just talking right before we started recording. We were talking about, you coming back home. Today is a sunny day in San Diego, and you are in San Diego. But a couple days ago, you were back home in the Central Valley of California. Can you kind of walk us through your early beginnings, where home is for you, and kind of start off from there?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in the Central Valley. So I was born in Fresno, but was raised in Selma, California my entire life. And so it's a very rural area, agriculture. It's a lot of vineyards, a lot of orchards. I actually had the privilege to have great grandparents around growing up. And so they actually owned a ranch for raisins, actually. So grapes that you put out in the sun to grow for raisins. And so a lot of my life was kind of centered around really being close to my family. So I was never alone. I'm an only child, and it's only me, my mom, and my grandparents. And so it was very much big on family, because I think I'm the only one who moved out for this long a period of time. So if I wanted to go to my Nina, my Ninos, they're down the street. If I want to go to my grandma's sister's house, she's also down the street. Everyone's within maybe a 30-minute drive from each other. So growing up, it was very much like big family holidays all the time, all like 30 of us going to the ranch. I had got to learn where my family came from. So I worked on the ranch actually for most of my life, from the age of 12 up until almost like until I graduated every summer. I learned how to prune, how to center, how to roll the trays, how to drive the tractor, how to put the trays onto the tractor and empty the raisins out. I got paid because they're like, you're doing work, so you get to get paid. But they really kind of taught me, where my great grandpa came from, because he was born here in California still, but he grew up his entire life working with sun-made raisins. And so it was really good to see, like, what he did and what he learned to save up to own his land. Like, that ranch is our family's ranch. And so I really appreciated it, and I loved it. I loved being outside. It was interesting coming out of the ranch and having dirt all up in your nose, but it really made me appreciate a lot of what my family has done for me, especially because otherwise I didn't need a job in high school. I was very active. I got to play sports. I got to be in band and choir and theater and all these things during the school year because, my family was able to provide for me. And during the summer, I was like, I'm willing to do this because this is what y'all did for me before I was even born. And, this is why we have everything. Right. And so, yeah, super active in Selma, California, super small town.
What time did you normally have to get up to be able to work in the farm?
Ooh, that was so to be in as much cool shade as possible. We all got up around 3:30 a.m. because we would work until about, I would say, around 3 p.m. We'd take a break to eat. or like just like actually go inside and sit down. Like we had water and everything, and my mom made me breakfast. But we would get up at 3:30 a.m., get to the ranch around 4 a.m., try to get as much work as possible done before it got too sunny, because you get paid by the row. And sometimes if it's raisin season, you get paid by the tray. And so different rows have different trays. And then we take maybe like a 2-hour break, because it would be most of our family out there too. So my grandpa definitely had other workers, but he also had his family out there as well. And then we would be done around 6 p.m. because we work for another like 2.5 hours, 3 hours. Because then by then, my mom at least took me out, and she's like, okay, Skye's gonna go home and shower and take a break, because I was still pretty young. But yeah, so we got up really early just because we wanted to get as much work done before the sun hit, because it got really hot in Fresno.
Right, for sure. It can go over 100 degrees during the summertime, or during springtime it can get up to 90 something. How did you, was this mainly your job during the summertime as a young kid growing up, or was this even when you were in school? Did you have to get up early in the morning, go put in a couple hours, and then go to school?
So it was mainly summer and then into fall, because summer is the main time where you put the raisins out and you hope there's no rain, and that's when the grapes dry into raisins the most, and so that's when you need the most help. And then going into fall is when you're starting to center and prune the vines, the vineyards, to tie them up to let them grow again by the time summer comes around. So since I was pretty young, for the most part, they didn't want me tying, because if you tie the vine and it slips, it comes and whacks you in the face. And I was super short, still super short. So I would stop probably maybe the first month of school. I would mainly go on the weekends at that point. I wouldn't really go during the school week, because my family was like, you need to get good grades. But sometimes I just go out and just go visit and go help clean more around the house than go out into the ranch. But yeah, my family really wanted me to focus on school. So
right. No, for sure. No, and not to detract, but kind of to tie in and add a little bit. This reminds me of a movie called McFarlane. Not necessarily, it's a movie with students that are farmers essentially, and they get up in the morning and they go do some work at the farm, at the ranch, and then they have to go to school. So that's why I kind of brought it up. Maybe you had a similar thing. And for those that are watching, if I recommend McFarlane to watch it, it's a really interesting, and it's based on true events. So you might really want to watch it. So off of that, you mentioned, and I mentioned that you're a bioengineer. I know that you're a bioengineering, and you are, how, being in Central California, how did you decide to go ahead, and at what age were you exposed to STEM? I mean, obviously you're at the ranch and you're doing this, so maybe it would have been a lot easier to simply just stay at the ranch and keep going with the family tradition. But how did you get exposed, and at what age did this happen?
So, I mean, in school we always had science, but I think where I wanted to become a part of STEM was I think I've always wanted to be a doctor. Okay. My family has always had some type of orthopedic issue. So whether it's, hip replacement, someone tore their ACL, a rotator cuff, something, someone was always getting hurt, and I was always like there to see them get better. My uncle crashed his motorcycle and had road burns all over his body, and so we helped take care of him. So it was very much just like me, like knowing that doctors help people. And so I don't think it was a direct, like, that's what STEM is, but it was definitely very much like leading me towards a path of medicine, right? And so that's kind of where a lot of, I think, Central Valley students go, is to the doctors, to become a doctor. That's what we're pushed to be. And so when I went, say we got introduced to STEM, specifically STEM, it wouldn't be, aside from just math classes, which I really liked a lot, and I wanted to skip classes in middle school, but our middle school didn't have anything past Algebra 1, and I actually tested out of it and got into geometry, but we didn't have an option to take it, so I had to stay back a year in math. I didn't really get exposed to it, I think, until I took trig and pre-calc, which was my junior year of high school. Wow. The sense of understanding, like, not just necessarily what science is, but understanding what engineering is, anything. Just because my math teacher was like, you spend time after class teaching students about trig and pre-calc because you like to do that. You like to come in early and tell people, hey, like, we're going to do a review session for this quiz. Like, I'm going to be teaching it. And that's when he, was like, have you heard about engineering before? And I was like, I don't know what that is. I want to be a doctor. I was in Doctor's Academy where we learned about toxicology, about different anatomy parts. We got to shadow a doctor. And so it was very much just medicine, which I still think is a part of STEM, but I don't think it truly is what STEM is, because it uses it, but it's never like, oh, this is like the math behind it. This is, obviously it's the science behind it, but they don't teach about the technology, they don't teach about the engineering. Not until my math teacher was like, you know what, like you should look up what engineering is. And I was like, okay. So I literally Googled that I liked biology, that I liked chemistry, that I liked math, and at the time I liked physics.
Okay.
And high school physics, just normal physics. And I did a couple of researching here and there, and literally the major of bioengineering popped up. And so me being still wanting to do pre-med, I was like, you know what? Bioengineering sets you apart from a lot of people who just do basic biology. Because, there's this engineering aspect. And I still don't know what engineering was. I was just like, it sounds cool, and it involves a lot of math. And math was my favorite thing. I loved it so much. I took AP Calculus BC. I didn't take AB. I took BC right away because it was offered for the first time. I remember being in that class my senior year, being super excited. I was like, wow, I really like calc, like a lot. Like this makes sense. And so I applied everywhere as a bioengineer that I applied to school. I did not apply to anything different anywhere else. It was just much luck of the draw, I would say.
So that was your top priority, is be a bioengineer, and you applied everywhere within California or everywhere, Stanford, the Ivy Leagues, Harvard, or you applied to all of those?
I applied to MIT with big hopes, but and that's the only, and Rice University, those are the only two out-of-state colleges, because though my family was willing to let me go to college, they wanted me to stay in California. And so I actually have not a funny story about Fresno State because it's a good school, but I actually got a full ride acceptance to Fresno State where they paid for my entire tuition, all of my books, all of my housing. But I said no.
Any particular reason you might share with us why you said no?
Yeah, they did not have bioengineering. I would have to have made that major. It was not accredited. So I applied to that as a mechanical engineer there, but I didn't want to do mechanical engineering. It was definitely not something I wanted to do. And I think growing up, though I had a good family life, I've struggled and fought for a lot of things. And, kind of my life was difficult in certain aspects that in college, at least, I was like, I don't want it to be more difficult than I need it to be. I really want to enjoy a structure given to me to get my degree. And so, I turned down Fresno State. Also, I knew that I could call my grandma and she would come bring me food if I needed it, or if I needed laundry done, she would do it because they're right there. And so, I decided Fresno State was definitely not a place I wanted to go.
Because you essentially become complacent to a certain degree and not so independent.
And I knew they were going to miss me, but I knew it was good for all of us. It was definitely, I was their central life of, like, what is Skye doing?
Oh, I see. So you get acceptance letters from other colleges. Why did you choose UCSD over in beautiful San Diego, California, right by the beach?
So I actually got accepted to Cal Poly SLO as bioengineering, which is a pretty good school to get into, and also as well as Cal Poly Pomona, UC Irvine, UC Santa Cruz. Where else did I apply? I applied to 4. But yeah, I basically, it was between Cal Poly SLO and UCSD for me. But I really didn't know about UCSD and what the school was. No one in my high school, I think, has come here in a really long time, so no one ever talked about it. My counselor just told me the last minute, maybe. She's like, you have an extra fee waiver, you should apply to UCSD. And I was like, okay. She's like, well, there's a 6-college system, so you should research about that. And I was just like, okay, sure. And so, I think, again, I got lucky that I just applied. I didn't do much research on what the top bioengineering schools were in the world. I just knew I wanted to do it and then go to med school. So to me, I was like, wherever I go is going to be great. But then Jacobs School of Engineering has this thing called the overnight program, engineering overnight program. I don't know how long ago it started, but they were willing to pay for my flight from Fresno to San Diego to bring me to campus for 2 nights and 3 days to show me the engineering life here on campus. And so it was the same weekend as SLO's SWE, Society of Women Engineers, overnight program. But my family and I have visited SLO so often because it's only maybe 2.5 hours away from Selma, when I saw the UCSD one, I was like, Mom, I want to go. I've never been to UCSD. We've been to San Diego for wrestling tournaments and softball tournaments, but not for school. And so I was like, hey, Mom, like, this is so cool. She's like, are you sure this is a real thing? I said, I'm pretty sure it's a real thing. Like, this is like the UCSD email. And so she's like, well, you're not flying. I'm driving you down. And I was like, okay. She's like, I will stay in a hotel for the 3 days that you're there, and then we'll drive back up. And so when I went, I remember just seeing the LASA centers where we got dropped off, being super excited and like, okay, bye, Mom. And then like just left the car, like took my luggage and just left. And my mom's like, bye, I'll see you. I'm like, you're going to be in San Diego. It's fine. And so the entire 3 days, I did not text my mom as much as I should have. But she realized that because I wasn't texting her, that I was actually really enjoying being here at UCSD. I really enjoyed the Idea Center. I got to meet Jenny and Michelle at the time. They were super nice. My host was super sweet. She was also from the Central Valley. She was also a bioengineer. And just doing the activities and seeing how much they really cared about their engineers here at UCSD, I think was what I was looking for, especially also because I saw diversity here. Not to say anything bad about other schools, but I definitely, when I walk into the room and I'm one of the darkest ones, it makes me a little concerned that there's not other people who have the same story as me, who, grew up in the same culture as me. I don't need to be in it all the time, but, me moving 4.5 hours away or moving even 2 hours away, I think it was important for me to still be around people that I could share things with and they could appreciate it.
For sure.
And also learn new things from people too, because there's so many different people here at UCSD that I've gotten to know and understand their life and understand their culture. And so the day my mom picked me up, I think it was an 8-hour drive because of traffic, I was just talking about UCSD, just talking about it and being super excited and be like, yeah, there's all these cool things. The bioengineering department is super awesome. I learned they only accept at the time like maybe 50 people per subdivision of bioengineers. And so I was like, I got into that, and then I was learning about how prestigious the bioengineering department here was, what research was. I was like, I didn't think I could do research, and just like all these things were just like exploding in my head. The way they talked about engineering, I finally learned what it was. About just improving the quality of life of anything, whether it be through phones, whether it be through traffic, whether it be through people, whether it just be simply through like how is like a grocery store laid out, or how's a manufacturing floor laid out. And so I remember telling her that night, because I was going to my godson's second birthday party. So we're driving back home. I remember telling her, like, I want to go here. She's like, I thought you wanted to go to SLO. I was like, no, I want to go to UCSD. Like, I had never in my life bought a college shirt because I thought it was very, like, you're not going to go, unless you have a sibling there. I was like, you're not going to go there. Like, unless you go there, like, why are you wearing a shirt from here? Like,
for sure.
You go there? Like, it was kind of weird for me. And so that day before we left, I bought a UCSD t-shirt. And I told my mom, like, I'm coming here. She's like, you sure? I was like, yes, Mom. Like, as soon as Micah's birthday party is over, I want to SIR. Like, I want to do it. Like, this is where I'm gonna go.
Okay. And what is SIR?
Oh yeah. SIR is submit intent to register.
Okay. So, submit intent to register. Okay.
Yeah. So it's basically accepting your offer to a school. You still have to go through multiple processes, and you can submit intent to register and withdraw it, but it doesn't look great. So that's basically telling the school, like, I want my spot. Like, this is the spot that I want to go to school.
So off of the 6 college choices that you had, now that you went to this info session for 3 days and you were really rattled up and hyped up, what college did you end up being placed in?
Yeah. So when I ranked them, I definitely didn't read them as much as I should have. I did not look into the general education requirements because I thought every college, I thought every school was just like, they have a solid GEs.
They're not all different. No. I mean, they're not all the same.
They're all different.
Yeah. So
they're very different.
Roosevelt, Rebel, Warren, you have Marshall, you also have Muir, right? Muir. And then you have the 6th college, which I don't think it's named,
7th.
right? Oh, is it named the 6th?
No.
Okay.
So we have 6th and then 7th as well.
Okay. All right.
So I'm pretty sure I put Revell first because I saw the well-rounded student. And in high school, I was very much like, what? I'm a well-rounded student. I enjoy history sometimes and things like that. Right. So I'm in Revell.
Yeah, right. So for the students that are possibly watching this, be careful, because what you assume a high education in your high school is totally different than what a high education is at a university level.
Mhm.
So you have to be really careful. You might be the top of the crop, the 10%, the 1% at your high school, but it depends on where you're at the nation. If you move to a college, the 1% at that college blows you out of the water. So you have to be really careful. You have to definitely read those descriptions, and you have
Mhm.
to make a conscientious decision of which college selection you want to be placed in. So you got admitted into Rebel.
Yes.
Um, what happened when you actually started your first quarter there and you started seeing the college requirements
Mhm.
aside from the engineering requirements, and you're like, oh my god, this is different.
Yes. I didn't realize that I had to take 5 writing classes with
Hmm.
Revel. I'm actually not done yet, so I'm taking the
Hmm.
5th year to some multiple reasons. But I still have one more class to go for humanities. Most of the life sciences and everything apply to me because I'm
Hmm.
bioengineering, so I take chemistry anyways. I take physics as well. I take biology regardless, so those ones weren't too bad. Considering that I didn't have the privilege of knowing another language growing up, I also have the language requirement, which you have to be proficient, meaning that you have to pass the 4th class of any language. So that's usually 1D or 1DX, as well as a social studies requirement that I thought was going to translate over and it didn't, and your DEI, which is your diversity, equity, and inclusion, which might be newer for most people to hear if they went to school at
Right.
UCSD before
Hmm.
2010.
Yeah, that is
Um,
different.
yeah, and so the humanities was the big one
Hmm.
because starting your winter quarter of your freshman year, you take Hum 1, which is 6 units plus, 6 units. And so, unit wise, if a class is 6 units, that means you're going to be spending easily over 12 hours
Hmm.
studying for that class. It's usually 2 hours per unit. And
Hmm.
so, it was hard.
Yeah.
I pushed a lot of classes around. Again, I took AP Calc BC and I got a 5 on the AP test. So I didn't have to take 20A and 20B. Math 20A and Math 20B.
Hmm.
And so if I would have had to take Math 20A and 20B, Math 20B from multiple students, if not almost every single student that I've heard that's taken it, has been the hardest math class they've taken at all at UCSD, even harder than Vector Calc 3. Um, because of the Taylor series and just the way it's taught. It's just all across, and any professor that you take in, it's just the hardest class you can take.
Right.
So I got lucky with that. But my fall quarter, I took physics 2A for the first time, and that was the first time that I've ever seen like engineering physics,
Hmm.
calculus physics. In high school, we just had a regular physics class. The one thing I remember from that class is learning about colors
Hmm.
and how
Hmm.
colors work based off of light or paint.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that was a big shock because a lot of people were like, "Oh, this is so easy. Like I didn't get a 5 on the AP exam for this for physics, but like it's the same thing." And I'm sitting there like, "What do you mean? Like I've never seen this before. I don't know what this is."
Right.
Um, I was having a really hard time in physics 2A, and that's when I kind of realized that mechanics doesn't really click in my head that
Mm.
easy.
Okay.
Um, so with bioengineering, you don't have to always do mechanics. So
Hmm.
I'm grateful for that.
Okay.
But I remember 2A just being really hard struggle, and you know, we were all actually doing fairly well in that class. I think a lot of us had a B plus,
Okay.
but we had a specific professor that quarter whose policy was all of his classes are a perfect bell curve
Mm.
at the end of the quarter.
Right.
So that means even if all of you got an A,
There's going to
he
be
will
a group
go
of you that will not pass the
past
course.
the
There's a
course.
group of you that will get a C, and there's a
C.
group that will definitely get a B and an A. So, okay,
Yes.
understood. He wants to spread it around,
Yeah.
make sure that he's got an array of okay, all right, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
So
So you mentioned
so
that
that
all of
happened.
us, you mentioned that all of us essentially, you mentioned all of us had essentially A, B for the most part. When you
Yes.
say all of us, you already had a group that you study with. That did you come in and you already form a group of friends because of that
Yeah.
experience? The couple of days before or a couple months before when you actually went in, how did you meet these individuals? How did you
Yeah.
start getting those friendships going?
Yeah. So UCSD actually has a pretty cool program which is targeted towards underrepresented minorities or URMs and low-income students, which is called the Summer Engineering Institute. And I was part of the first cohort. They invited me after the engineering overnight program. I was a part of the first cohort that I got to stay for 5 weeks. So I actually got to take 2 summer classes, a MATLAB class and a project design class. Yeah. And so I actually got to meet 63 other individuals who were engineering as well. Yeah. Before the school year even started. So it was August 1st. Yes, August 1st all the way up until the second or the first week of September, 2-week break, and then school. Right. And so they always offer every year. So they post it online everywhere. Anyone's available to apply to it.
I think Olivia Grave is the one that actually.
Yes. She's the director of Idea Center.
Exactly. Yeah. She's the director of the Idea Center. When I went to UCSD right before, they still have Summer Bridge. It's similar to what you mentioned, but yes. During my time, as back in 1995 when I was going in, they only offered Summer Bridge. And you know, when Olivia actually graduated and came back, and now she's a professor there, she's the one that came up with the idea because she also saw that Summer Bridge was going on. So she said, why don't we do something for the engineering students that are coming in? And that's how that program was born and mimicked Summer Bridge, essentially. So it makes a lot of sense. And you're also, you know, I mentioned that you're the SHPE president right now. How did you get involved with SHPE when you started? Did you obviously at your high school level didn't know what SHPE was? You had no idea what engineering meant. So how did you get started?
Yeah, so as the thing, a lot of SHPE members at UCSD are very involved in freshman recruitment. So one of my peer facilitators, which is similar to an RA for the summer program, actually 2 of them, they were on the SHPE board the year prior, and we're going to be on the SHPE board coming into my freshman year. And so they mentioned it to all of us, kind of. They didn't say, like, you better come or anything like that, but they definitely mentioned what the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers were. And that's actually where I met Gabriel Gutierrez. Him and I met there. We became friends, along with some other friends that were all from San Diego, no one from the Central Valley, mainly from LA and things like that. So our fall quarter, the first GBM, all of us were like, hey, you know what? Let's just go check it out. They said there's free food. I think it was pizza. It was in Atkinson Hall, which is a very, very pretty hall. Right. And we're like, you know what? Like, sure, it's a Thursday night, 6:30. I don't have class right now. And I don't have a quiz this week, so it's fine. Because physics usually have quizzes every Friday. And so we kind of went, and, you know, I just kind of sat there. I saw some of my old peer facilitators. I was like, hey, how's it going? Like this and that. And like, you know, sitting with the GBM. I think they had a sponsor. I don't remember who it was, but it definitely wasn't a bioengineering company. So I was kind of zoning out a little bit. But then Eddie Tapia, I think he was there. I think he was maybe an outreach chair at the time.
Oh, so he was part of the board already. Okay.
Yeah, he was part of the board.
And just for the audience, you know, she's mentioning names, and these individuals are very active and have been very active throughout UCSD student chapter. And I've known all of them. So to a certain extent, I know what she's talking about. But for the audience, just bear with us. She's throwing names out for us. So keep on going.
Yeah, and so Eddie Tapia, he actually asked, can all the freshmen come to the front after the end of the GBM? And so we're like, okay, we'll go up there. Hi, like introduce yourself, a little icebreaker here and there. And then he's like, can I get all your guys' names and like phone numbers and emails? I'm just gonna add you guys to kind of like a little freshman group. We're like, okay, sure, why not? And so we added there, and so they're like, okay, we'll remind you when the next GBM is, and we'll come back. And so I like the icebreakers because they're super corny. You know, as a freshman, you kind of actually like the corny icebreakers because you're shy. And like if everyone's being kind of silly, you can be a little silly too. And so I think after the second GBM, they actually invited us out to Pizookies. So BJ's is a restaurant, and it's actually maybe a 15-minute walk from campus. It's down the hill and up the hill. And so like, hey, we're all gonna go to BJ's. We're gonna walk over there. We're gonna have giant pizza bazookies, and we're just gonna talk and hang out. And so that's where I actually got to meet. And I'm gonna throw some names out there too. People like Yosira Hernandez, Karina Nino, Emily Reveles, Eddie Tapia, Andrea Sanao. I got to meet Jose Ramirez. I got to meet Carlos Sandoval, Carlos Anaya. And these are all people that were the SHPE board my freshman year and who are very close friends to me. Got to meet all of them there and just kind of start talking about like what they did, how they're enjoying school. They're talking about classes like, yeah, that class was a joke, or that class was hard, don't take this professor. And I just realized like this was such a good group of friends to just be around. And you know, hearing them talk and seeing a lot of them be fourth years getting ready to graduate, talking about what jobs they're going to work for, like what internships they've done. Carlos Anaya was another bioengineer. Emily Moreno was a bioengineer. So I instantly clicked with them, and they're talking about their research. And I just, at that point, I was just like, these are people that I think they can help me be successful here at UCSD. Because I didn't know anybody at UCSD other than my friends from SEI. But I wanted to know older people, and I've always been used to talking to older people. And so they're not that much older than me, maybe a year or two, but to me, I looked up to them so much because they were doing such great things and giving up some of their time to go do good things, like going to Logan Elementary, going to TJ Outreach, doing high school Empower. I think right then and there, I got recruited to help work in the Reach Committee, which is our hackathon, which was the second year it was being ran, which was when I joined. And that's where I got super involved in SHPE. I'm actually wearing the shirt right now.
Right. Yeah. Right. I see that. Yes, exactly.
And yeah, that's where I started digging my hands into what SHPE does. Was started with Reach. And yeah.
So you started getting really involved. What was your biggest surprise between you mentioned the Raza Center. So that's, that was one of the things. And I'm pretty sure that you know what Mecha is.
Yes.
Why did you even try joining Mecha versus SHPE, or was that something? How do you compare and contrast them? They're both student organizations. It's just that they're both kind of different, and just want to get your perspective as to why you decided to pursue SHPE.
So I didn't actually hear a lot about Mecha until I joined a lab and some other non-engineers were in it. Okay. But I think SHPE's willingness to just recruit and go out there and be out there, I think, which is what really drew me in. Also, I will say, because it's strictly engineering, I think it's nice. Just because I feel like there's so much to navigate. There's so much to navigate in college in general. Like overall, any major that you're going to choose, there's so many things to navigate. Right. But engineering was so new to me that I felt like I needed specifically a club that's going to help me navigate engineering. Just because I already at the time was still like, okay, I know what it is, but I don't know what it is. And I feel like even after your 4 years, you're like, sometimes I know what it is. So I, was really very much just like, I'm staying here and I'm going to be doing this. And it's just nice to be around other people who take the same 20 series as you, take the same 2 series as you. And so I think class-wise, it's helpful too.
You have some commonality with other folks and individuals, and you have that, you start clicking and you start making that network and you build it and it works for you. So that's awesome. That's fantastic. Now, you mentioned that it's a UCSD is known for research, being a research school, et cetera, et cetera. How did you find a research professor to do research in? Was it through SHPE? Was it through the Idea Center? Right now, you're doing, a little research thing with Mac Kittrick Lab. I don't know if you can talk a little bit about how you got in and what that means.
Okay, so my first research position was actually, I was a paid lab hand, and I worked in a microbiology lab. So it wasn't really engineering. And that was at the time, it's called Port Triton, but now it's called Handshake. They look for lab research assistants all the time. I really needed a job at the time, and so I wanted to do research, but I needed it to be paid. And so I, just pushed my resume out there, and I found a lab manager who was super excited to take in this new kid. She was a first-gen student. I'm not first-gen, but she was a first-gen student at the time. She's a woman in her field. She had multiple patents, and so she saw this fresh, new, young woman who had almost no skills whatsoever when it comes to applying into lab. And she's like, I can mold her into what I want. And so you actually find a lot of professors that way. I just needed a position that was paid, and they were paying. And so it was in cancer research. So I was like, that's still applicable to bioengineering. And so I went into that lab and I stayed for about 9 months until I realized I didn't want to do cancer research. It was very interesting, and I had another friend come and fill my position because she was super passionate about cancer research, and so it just wasn't for me. But I'm glad I got someone else an opportunity to work there because they're doing great things. But the McKittrick lab, actually, I got in through SHPE because one of my current board members now, who was also a board member at the time, his lab was actually looking for people. So if you have current board members or current members in SHPE that are looking for new undergrad assistants, usually the grad student like, hey, can you make a slide and present this at the SHPE GBM? We're looking for new undergrads to take on this project. And so his name's Luis Garcia. He's one of my board members now. He's my lab partner as well. He was like, hey, Skye, like, can you help me format this PowerPoint? Like, my lab's looking for a position. And so I was like, okay, or like a new person to fill this position. It's for like Arduino, electrical engineering work, and like, you know, prototype, device prototyping. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'll help you look at it. And like, was helping to make it up so we can put on our GBM slides. And I was looking at it. I was just like, this seems like what I want to do. I'm focused with electrical engineering now with my bioengineering degree. And so I fell in love with Arduinos so quickly, and learning how to collect data using different types of transducers, which essentially just make one signal into an electrical signal. And so I was like, yeah, like definitely we can talk about this, because I was running the GBM for that week. But I was also on the side was like, can I apply? Like, are you opposed to me applying? I know we spend a lot of time together, but like I really like this idea. He's like, no, yeah, I'm gonna let our grad student make the decision. And so we presented it. He talked about it. A handful of us applied to it. And I got an interview with the grad student. And so when I got the interview with the grad student, it was funny. Luis was also there. And so we were talking about my grad student. He's from MIT with a material science bachelor's. And so he's doing his PhD in material science here at UCSD. And so he knew nothing about electrical engineering. He's like, I don't even know how to make an LED blink on Arduino. I don't really know how to collect or make making testing devices, testing methods when it comes to like collecting data. So like they have all these cool fancy machines, but they don't have anything to collect the acceleration of a material. They don't have anything to do automation and do these other testing. And so I was like, yeah, I can do that. Like I like creating new ways to collect information to validate and do proof of concepts. And so we had maybe like a 40-minute interview. He's like, well, I'd like to give you the position now. And I was just like, but I had also applied to another position.
How did that interview actually take place? Because from my experience, you know, interviews are kind of formal. You have to go in, dress nice. So can you kind of walk me through what a lab interview with a grad student went like?
Yeah. So it's actually it varies from lab to lab. So I applied to 2 positions at the time. So that was McKittrick's lab, and then the other one was the different grad student who was his own project. So I went dressed business casual, which means essentially I just didn't wear a blazer, but I still wore slacks, I still wore a blouse, you know, had my hair nice and tidy, and you know, lab safety shoes though. So I didn't wear heels. I wore boots because I was going into the lab, and so with that. But then when my current grad student came out, he's super nonchalant. It's very casual. So he was wearing, I think, some jeans, some boots, a t-shirt, and he had a baseball cap on. And so I was very much like, oh, I'm a little overdressed. He's like, no, it's okay. Like that's like, you're doing great. Like that's how you should go to an interview. Like I'm sorry, I just came from like a workout and things like that. So I was like, okay, like this grad student seems pretty relaxed, which I like. Because working in a lab, sometimes you don't want to be working in slacks and a blouse. You'd rather be working in jeans and boots and a t-shirt, especially moving around, grabbing things, like reaching over stuff and doing all these things.
You're doing research, so you really want to be comfortable and focus on what you're doing, right?
And you could be standing for like 4 hours straight without even realizing it. You're so into it. But then the other grad student that I interviewed with was very formal. It seemed more like a interview for a job at a company. And you know, it wasn't too bad. I liked it, but it was very much like in his office. Like his office is very plain. It was just kind of me and him asking me technical questions, which I was fine answering, but it just didn't seem very genuine. And I knew I was looking for a grad student who was gonna, you know, ask me, are you going to grad school? If you don't want to go to grad school, why don't you want to go to grad school? If you want to go to industry, like why? Like tell me about these things. How are you doing? And so I declined the other offer and took the offer with my current grad student, who was the one that was more casual, which I think was a good decision
Well,
because
that kind of leads me to the next question.
Mhm.
And you are going to do electrical engineering. You're going to go for your master's on that. So you
Mhm.
are planning on doing um, a master's and going to grad school. What
Yes.
grad school are you going to target? Is it UCSD on campus, continue
Mhm.
with them, or are you planning on going somewhere else for your grad?
Yeah. So I'm always flip flopping, but I know eventually I do want to get my PhD.
Hmm.
So if I do get my master's in electrical engineering, which is a definite possibility if things kind of don't play out financially when it comes for PhD,
Hmm.
I am planning on looking at USC.
Okay.
USC has a really good bioinstrumentations program that's really
Hmm.
integrated between bioengineering and electrical engineering.
Okay.
Um, and if not, there's also the bioinstrumentations at UCSD, but I'm not a big fan at staying at the same school for too long.
Okay.
I love UCSD so much. I have good networks and connections here, but I am too much of a networking person that I want to go out and experience a different campus, a different life, different people.
Hmm.
So I like starting brand new. University of Washington is a big school that's on my list right now as well. Just because, again, I talked to their electrical engineering department at SHPE conference, actually,
Hmm.
where the college's booth were at, and I got to talk to a PhD student, and we really hit it off. He's like, "Can I have your resume? You can come visit the campus. Like, we can talk about these things." And then, everything happened recently, so we didn't get to go visit. I'm
Hmm.
also
Hmm.
going to be probably looking at UCLA. Um, MIT is always going to be an option that I'm going to try
Right.
to apply for. I'm always going to strive to do that, regardless of
Right.
where I want to
Right.
go.
Right.
Also, Carnegie Mellon has been a
Uh-huh.
big one on my list right now. And then I would say probably after that would be John Hopkins. Hopkins, I wouldn't say is a reach, but it's another school I think that if I go to a master's and then if my PI likes me, they can keep me as a PhD student, I
Hmm.
think would be great as well.
Okay.
And so, yeah, those are there's a lot of schools that are on my radar and I'm
Right.
slowly narrowing them down. But I would say USC and University of Washington and
Okay,
Carnegie
so
Mellon are my
okay,
top three.
awesome, fantastic. You mentioned the National Conference of SHPE, Society of
Yes.
Hispanic Professional Engineers. That's a national
Mhm.
conference. For those that have kind of listened to other episodes, you've heard me talk about the national conference. Um, how? Let's go back to your first conference. When did that happen, and what was your actual take on it? And the reason I'm asking is because I want to go back to that scene where you walk in and you were, not fully professionally dressed for that interview with your McKittrick interview guide,
Mhm.
but you were prepared to be in a semi-formal interview setting.
Mhm.
So how did you prepare for that? Was it something that you learned off of attending the National Ship Conference, or
Mhm.
was it something that you learned somewhere else?
I would
So,
say from the SHIP conference. So my
okay.
first one was my second year. I
Hmm.
believe it was in Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay.
Uh, and that was actually my first career fair that I had ever gone to.
Okay. Okay.
um, and so I went and I had professional clothing at the time just because Doctors Academy, we did presentations. I had done shadowing with a doctor, which you have to dress very professionally in there. And so, I went and, I was ready, but I only had like one blazer at the time. I think I
Hmm.
had one pair of heels, and then I just kind of cycled out some clothes. Um, and so going and talking about yourself
Hmm.
at a career fair that big for the first time probably
Hmm.
wasn't the best choice for myself.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
felt super underprepared going to the national conference that way.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it was just because at the time I was just like, I'm just going to do research. I don't really care about an internship. And then I was doing other summer jobs on campus. But going there and it's funny seeing the difference between tech companies, so like CS and computer engineering companies versus like structural engineering companies versus bioengineering companies versus mechanical engineering companies. Everyone's so different.
Hmm.
And I think we've brought this up to professionals. Don't you think it's funny seeing all these college students dressed up to a T, clean and everything like that, and you see a company wearing their t-shirt and their jeans? Uh, but I think it still gives you a confidence boost, I think,
Hmm.
too,
Right.
to look that nice compared to your daily basis look. in college,
Right.
where it's
Yeah.
usually navy. Sometimes it's usually jeans and a t-shirt. Sometimes
Right.
you're wearing sweats. Sometimes
Yeah.
you're wearing like running clothes and exercise clothes to go to school.
Whatever's
Um,
available, you put on
yeah,
that day.
if it's clean, then I'm putting it on and going to
Right.
class. Like I got
Right.
10 minutes to go.
Right. For
And
sure.
so I think really practicing, you know, I went to companies that didn't even apply to me and I just wanted to talk to them.
Okay.
And they're like, you're bioengineering, why are you here? And I'm just
So
thinking,
the
at the
more you
time.
practice, the more
Mhm.
experience you obtain, the better you started getting.
Yeah.
So when you walk in and you see, at the national conference for the very first time, what was if you could go back, what did you
Mhm.
feel? What was the feeling when you walked into that conference room area with all the hundreds of companies laid out with
Mhm.
tables and booths and what was your mindset where you said, "Oh my God, is this real? What's going on?"
I was just like, okay, like I knew SHPE was a legitimate organization from day one. Just the
Hmm.
way SHPE UCSD runs their stuff, it's so organized. It's been
Right.
on top of everything. But then I realized, like, wow, there's a lot of people here who either didn't know engineering was and got lucky, or knew what engineering was and they know where to go. They know who wants them. They know that this organization can do so much for them. And then seeing companies be out there on the floor, you can also see like these companies care. These
Hmm.
companies care a lot about who's representing their company, who's doing the work, who's doing the research, who are the people that make their company them. Because you can see companies that aren't there that are bioengineering related mainly, I started to think, why aren't they there? And you start to think a lot about the culture that engineering is trying to create and to preserve. And I think I was just in awe and excited because I got to meet so many people from different parts of the country that I never thought I was going to meet. Um, that people that the current SHPE chapter, because I was the technical chair at the time, so I was in a board position. Uh, that the current chapter and previous board members, they knew people from different states, they knew from different schools, they saw company representatives like, hey, you came to the SHPE conference again. And I was just kind of like, this is perfect, like this is amazing, this is giving you so many opportunities that you never knew that you could have. And I definitely felt underprepared, but I was like, okay, this is something that I can not buy a cup of coffee from Starbucks twice a week and save up to the $225 that it costs to go again. And like I was so excited for the next year, the year after that. I was like, I can't wait to be a professional and come back here, or I can't wait to be a grad student and come back here and talk to these students for engineering. I think from the first time I got into that room, I was just like, this is where I want to end up again. And I want to be on the other side.
Fast forward a couple years from that technical outreach position that you had now to you being the president of the UCSD SHPE student chapter. How did you decide to run, or at what point did you decide to run, or did somebody coax you to, hey, you're pretty good at this, why don't you try it out?
Yeah.
How did that
So
happen?
actually backtrack a little bit, my freshman year, we got to shadow positions.
Okay.
We literally drew names from a hat
Mhm.
as to like who you were shadowing. And so I got to shadow Jose Ramirez at the time,
Okay.
who was the president of the chapter my freshman year.
Mhm.
And so I think from that day on, I wanted to be the president of this club.
Okay.
It was very ambitious, but I just cared so much because I saw how much UCSD could give back to the community.
Right.
And I think that's what I really wanted to do for back home, but I know it's hard for me to do that, considering that I'm physically far away. But I think it was just very much like, you know what, like we have the chance to like help these freshmen, help these sophomores, juniors, seniors. We have this chance to help these elementary school students, these high school students here. And obviously I want them to come to UCSD, but I also want to be a representation of what it is to move away and to still enjoy your life as an engineer. And so I think from that day on, I was like, I wanted to be I was talked to a lot of people. They just seemed like I'm extroverted, but that's not what it takes to be a president. It takes to be caring and compassionate and truly wanting to see the success of others. And seeing that the board members before were really excited for me to be tech chair, that were like, you know what, for tech chair, you talk to a lot of these companies, you're really good at talking to these companies, become the VP external, you know, bring that money in, make those connections, bring these companies to talk. And then, you know, me and Gabriel Gutierrez, who was the president last year, were definitely like always joking, like, who's going to be president when we're at their fourth year? And, you know, he stepped up our third year because we did need a president. And so he became a president. He was a good one at that. And I definitely was like, thank you so much for taking that. I'm here to help you. And, you know, working with him side by side, being his VP external.
Right.
I learned a lot about being president. And so, and then now with Laura, she's also my VP external. It's kind of like, it's not always the VP external who becomes the president, but it's always keeping, like, you know, those connections with your board members and letting them see the work that you do. And so the presidents have always let us see what they do and what the work really is and the workload and how big it is and how important it is that you don't, as a president, you don't do much actual work, but you manage so many different things that it trickles down and it very much shows to the rest of the community.
As a student, how do you deal with your time management of being the president of an organization as SHPE and also coping with your classes? Because obviously, you know, SHPE it's an extracurricular activity. It is an organization, but it is not your main focus as a student. So how do you deal with that?
So I have 2 physical planners. I have a Google Calendar. I have another calendar, Outlook calendar. I have it as much as possible there to remind me of the little things that we forget sometimes about sending emails. So first of all, the easy things to neglect being the president is responding, but also I have reminders to let people do things, to delegate, to trust your board members that they have a job that they can do, and if they cannot do it, they will come to tell you. And if they haven't come and told you anything yet, then you can assume that they did it. And if they didn't, that's fine. You can go and have a talk about it again, saying, hey, like, if you can't do this thing, let me know. Like, let me know ahead of time. I will help you do it, or I'll help someone else find you do it. And it's very much trusting the fact that I have 12 other board members, or 11 other board members on with me. 12, sorry. Yeah, 12.
That are self-sufficient, functioning,
yeah.
and that are, you know, it's a well-running, oiled machine, essentially, where you guys come together, make a decision, somebody delegates something to somebody else, and they're supposed to be responsible individuals, which teaches them that responsibility that ultimately will become a professional aspect in their life. So that's fantastic. That's really cool. No, you also mentioned going back to that national conference where you decided, okay, you know, I see graduate students, I see professionals in the industry. Now you as an individual, you are at that crossroads where you're like, okay, whether do I go to the industry or do I pursue the graduate school path? And from what you're saying, you're going into the graduate school study path, that the academia path. When did you decide to do that, even though you told me earlier that you're going to be working with Northrop Grumman? So why pursue the academics versus the industry?
Yeah. So I did not really figure that out until this fall quarter.
Okay.
One of our bioengineering classes, we had a final. Instead of taking like a written or multiple choice, our professor said, I'm going to make you do a research paper. And you're going to have to apply these choose three imaging techniques for bioimaging and find a way to apply it to a common issue. And so I was, you know, already working kind of on a concussion project device prototype for my lab. And so I was like, you know what, I'll look at different types of traumatic brain injuries, which are called TBIs. And so I started reading into TBIs and sports and race cars and people and workers and the Army, the military, and how they're currently doing testing for TBI. And a lot of it is qualitative work. So that means that it's just a lot of bias and a lot of, I think this is what it looks like, or based off of other comparisons, this is what it looks like. It was never really hard data. And so I wrote a whole paper on it, not a whole paper, maybe I think it was 8 pages long. Okay. And so wrote the paper, kind of finished the final, turned it in. But then I found myself still reading about traumatic brain injury and like reading about neuroscience and reading about the brain and reading more about like how to use imaging. Can you use electrical imaging? Meaning like, can you look at the EEGs, the brain waves? And, you know, kind of like really seeing myself like not going on Twitter, not going on Instagram, not going on Facebook, instead reading like these academic papers. Okay. And then a week after school ended, there was an IEEE EMBS, which is IEEE is an Electrical Engineering National Society, and EMBS is Engineers for Medicine, Biology, and Science. And so they had a conference symposium at UCSD. And so a lot of our bioengineering professors were like, hey, you like EE, you should come check this out. It's about neuroscience. And so I went to go check it out, and it was all about neuroscience. Different people from different schools, professors from different universities, all coming presenting on their research. And it was all neuroscience. I got to meet, I cannot say his last name, but I know his first name is Terry. He works in the Salk Institute, and he works for the Center for, I think, Neuro Research. And I just was like, this is amazing. Like, you can do so much with the brain. We're having new technologies that, you know, that we're applying to phones and computers and things like that. We're getting better resolution on certain like pictures and stuff. And I was like, you can apply all these things to the brain, and you can figure out so many different things, or just anything about that. And I think I just got fascinated with the fact that we haven't touched any of this really. We're barely getting into it. Right. And so I saw myself pursuing a PhD in that, and definitely doing research on that. And then also I had a professor last quarter, and he's a professor this quarter as well for a senior design class, Dr. Wheeler, and he's just a teaching professor. And I got to see how much he cared about how we learn things. He very much cared, like, are you understanding this? Is this curriculum best suited for you? Is this too long? Is this too short? Do I need to change up the procedures? Like, just really genuinely caring if you're understanding the engineering concepts and applying them. And so I know he's a teaching professor because he has retired twice from being a research professor. And so maybe way down the road, I wouldn't really want to do that. But I think I would want to be a professor because I would like to see these engineering students and like give them the confidence, like it will come back. You will use this information later, and this is how you apply it. It's okay. These classes are meant to be hard. If they weren't hard, then anybody would be an engineer.
Right, exactly.
Like, you will get through it. You just need to think about it. You need to talk. Engineers work together. Obviously, don't cheat on my tests, but like, you know, with the homework, like talk about concepts, like, you know, develop your own ideas. Right. And so I think I found like that passion back into my AP Calc or my pre-calc class of teaching people before class about math concepts, seeing them get it, kind of really clicked again. And so I think industry is not always gonna be there necessarily, but I might go work there for a bit because I know becoming a professor is really hard, and you need a lot of experience, a lot of research, and it's especially going to like a top institute like UCSD if I want to be a professor here. Industry is probably definitely still something I'd have to do, but I think at the end goal is to be that professor, to not only do research but to be there for the students, to be like, hey, I did it. Trust me, I struggled so hard through most of my bachelor's degree. Like, you can do it. So
at this point, you know, you're in your fourth year, about to embark into your fifth year coming soon, and you've done research and whatnot, and you've led the SHPE chapter at UCSD. But what has been the most surprising thing as an individual coming from the Central California Valley area to UCSD, and, you know, being an individual that has achieved a lot of things that to a lot of people seem possibly impossible? So what has been the biggest surprise for you as a young lady?
I would say, you know, this internship coming up as a bioengineer working at Northrop Grumman. I'll be very honest, my GPA is not above a 3.0. And I know they have a strong policy that all their applicants have a 3.0 minimum. I think the biggest surprise is that all the skills and techniques and, you know, everything that I've learned actually applied, and that they appreciated that. That they appreciated that I knew my stuff when they asked me my questions. They appreciated that I went out of my way to become a better leader. They appreciated the fact that I didn't just do school. I mean, I knew people appreciated that, but I know it was very disheartening for a while when applying that they're, to certain companies are like, oh, your GPA is pretty low. I'm like, well, I switched my major. Like 13 classes don't count towards my or they don't count towards my current major anymore. I can't really drop those classes. That was a struggle that I had to get to. I think it was just very much like, it gave me a confidence boost that I need to just apply. I need to apply, and I need to talk. And that's why career fairs are so important, because you're not just a number on a page. You're a person, you're a face, you're a person, you're talking.
Your face-to-face interaction with a recruiter.
they're
That it's
seeing your
actually
excitement.
there, right?
They're seeing your
Exactly.
excitement. They're seeing your dedication. They're seeing the knowledge. You're not just staring blankly thinking, or you're not like typing something on the side to Google what that was.
Right.
They're seeing your innovation in person. And so I think that was surprising because it seems so easy for people who have a 3.8.
Right.
Sometimes
Right.
it seems
Right.
so easy for them, and so it was hard because I came from a school that didn't prepare me for this at all. Like I did well in my high school, but that's because they made it easy for a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it was so surprising to see that be appreciated. That obviously grades are important. That's gonna make your life a lot easier.
Right.
Trust me,
Right. Right.
it will.
Obviously. Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at the same time, it's like, I have been able to take a little bit more time on my tests because of online format, and I've been doing better. Maybe I just need a little bit more time to think the process. That's not anyone's fault. It's not bad to do that, especially in an academic setting. So maybe the systematically it's been kind of an issue for me. I was like, so it's super surprising to see that a defense company wanted a bioengineer to do systems engineering.
So
Um,
this internship, where did you actually apply and obtain the internship? Was it online? Was it
mhm,
at a UCSD career fair?
mhm.
Was it at the SHPE National Conference in Arizona?
It was actually at the ship conference.
Okay.
So we were all walking around going to different companies. I had actually applied online to Lockheed Martin at the time, and I got an interview with them. I was going to the very few biomedical companies that were there, and kind of, looking around. And then we actually had a big group chat of everybody that went to the conference, so all 30 of us. And someone in the group chat was like, hey, Northrop Grumman's looking for UCSD electrical engineering students. Go and ask for this name. And so a handful of us went, and I was just kind of like, you know what? I had just had I talked to IBM that they were going to set up a phone interview with me. And I was like, I'll go. I'll go over there to the booth. I'll go talk. I'll do my pitch. I'll do my spiel, kind of practice again. It's not going to hurt. If
Right.
they say no, I'm not going to be upset.
Right.
And so I went to go talk to them and talking about like my method testing and creating methods and like my documentation and like how did you figure out this is a proof of concept and validation. And so I was talking to the engineer and also recruiter, and he's like, you know what? I'm in mission systems, and I don't know entirely too much about electrical engineering, but what it sounds like you should get an interview. And he handed me an interview card, like right there on the spot. He's like, go fill in a time. You can probably interview today or tomorrow,
Okay.
because it was the first day of the career fair. And
Okay.
so I was like, oh, okay, like thank you.
Oh, it's
Very much surprised.
unexpected. It's really
Yeah,
unexpected.
I was very much like, oh, okay, like I was just kind of like in my head I said something loud. I was just like, oh, just here at practice. Like,
Uh-huh.
and that's not a weird brag or anything. It was very much a
Uh-huh.
genuine surprise of like,
Right.
oh, okay. I never had a non-bioengineering recruiter like want to know more and stuff like that.
Right.
And
Okay.
so I got it at the ship conference. I then interviewed the next morning and got the offer on the spot. So as soon as I finished my
Congratulations.
interview, it was just very much
Congratulations.
he's like, can I offer you this offer letter to work with Northrop Grumman? And I was just like, oh. I was like,
Right.
can I think about it? He's like, of course you can think about it. I was like, okay, thank you. Because,
Right.
it was in San Diego. They gave
Right.
me the option. They gave me a good pay. They offered a living stipend because I'm not from San Diego. It would
Right.
be a move. And so it was very much just super surprising. I was very in shock. So that's why when I say it's the most
Congratulations.
surprising
Yeah.
thing, it genuinely was, I think. It was,
Congratulations. That's incredible. Fantastic. Thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And that goes to show you, if you put in the hard work, the preparation, the dedication, the persistence, eventually it'll pay off. And I think one of the things that helped you, and maybe you realize it now, when you actually went into that to that to that booth and to interview with those individuals, you were
Mhm.
not expecting anything. You were really relaxed and you were yourself. And
Yeah.
that's what I want students to understand. When you want something really bad, sometimes you put mental blocks and mental barriers of, I'm not going to succeed. But when you clear your mind and go in and show who you really are, it opens up doors and it allows the other individual to connect with you at a more personal level, which brings more value to the table. So just remember and keep that in mind. Bringing that up, what do you believe your superpower to be? Do you have a superpower? If you don't think you have one, what would
Mhm.
you choose and why?
Okay. I think my superpower, it's a weird thing to say. I'm really good at putting things together like puzzles. things
Okay.
that you wouldn't think would work to work together. I think that has been my strength this entire time of pairing people up, either when it comes to mentorship, when it comes to getting a task done, is really looking and paying attention to your team's assets and their weaknesses, looking at my own assets and my own weaknesses, and, really figuring out, okay, you know what? Yeah, they're a little weak here, but they're really good at supporting this person. They're good at asking questions. They're good at answering questions. They're good at pondering inside, internally thinking and looking at the bigger picture. I think it's my favorite thing to do, and I think that's one of the biggest strengths, because systems engineering is really looking at things and putting it together to make it work better. And so I think that's going to be my biggest asset my entire life, because it's just something that I feel like people need. I may not have all the answers, but I know how to get to it.
Right.
I know
right.
the right people to ask, the right people to utilize, and have them give credit to where it's due too as well, because it's not an individual effort anymore. A lot of these things are definitely working in teams, and I think that's been my biggest success, is just knowing, suggesting, hey, maybe we should put that there instead, maybe see how that works.
Right.
And
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing the superpower of putting things together and being able to be insightful in a certain way and aspect of how things should work. You're a young lady. You're young, and you have been successful, from my perspective, of coming from the Central Valley to UCSD to achieving, an electrical engineering degree, and then pursuing a master's in electrical engineering, and also obtaining internships and research positions. But right now, what would you say your definition of success is at this point for you?
Okay. I think the definition of success for me is always learning something new,
Mm,
because I think it was so easy in high school just to assume that I knew everything.
okay, okay,
And just knowing that if I learned something new, that means I was uncomfortable because I didn't know something. And if I didn't know something, I put myself there to learn something.
okay.
It's just so easy to sit where you're comfortable and just to know everything and be the
Right.
number one at what you're doing. And you're just not growing. You're not. And so learning something new is the biggest thing, just because there's so many things to learn.
Right.
And I know eventually you have to not stop learning, but learn it maybe more towards your field,
Right.
a little bit
Exactly.
less broad, but you're still always learning. And I think that's just the biggest thing that you can do.
Right. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. This next question is one of my favorite ones to ask at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the podcast and interview. So let's say you can go back, get in your car, and you're driving back
Mm-hmm.
home. But when you're driving back home, you're driving back in time, and all of a sudden things start changing. And you're driving up the Grapevine by
Mm-hmm.
I-5, and then all of a sudden you get home, but you get home and you get out of the car and you see this young 12-year-old Skye, and she's about to get in this tractor, right? And you tell
Mm-hmm.
her, all right, hey, hold on, I only got about 2 minutes to talk to you. What two or three pieces of advice would you share with that young 12-year-old Skye early in the morning?
Okay. I would say, first, there are going to be teachers who will challenge you because they see your potential. Don't worry, you will have fun learning. You will. It will be there. If time will come, do not worry. Don't be afraid that you're not going to care. Number two is that your family is going to support you regardless of what you want to do. Do not worry about stressing them out. Tell them your feelings. Tell them when you're sad. Tell them when you're happy. Tell them when you're angry. They want to know. They want to hear you, and they will not be stressed out. They'll be happy that you called. And then number three, I think, is just to keep dreaming big. Don't ever, 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 ever let anything tell you that you can't. Don't even let your GPA tell you that you can't. You don't even know what a GPA is yet. Don't
Right.
let a person tell you that you can't. Don't let a professor, don't let a teacher, don't let a friend, don't let anyone tell you you're stupid. Don't let them tell you that ever. I think this is a super big thing that I would tell them, my 12-year-old self. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Skye.
Of
Thank
course.
you. I've enjoyed this interview quite a lot. We've been planning it for a while. We
Yes.
were going to do it in person, couldn't be able to do it because of the whole situation and
Mhm.
our schedule conflicts and whatnot. But I'm glad that we were able to connect via Zoom and be able
Mhm.
to do it today and be able to do it this way. And I think I really enjoyed it. I hope it was enjoyable for you. To the
Yes, it was.
audience, thank you so much for joining another wonderful episode of Success Innovation. I hope that you continue to plug in and to listen and to learn from the wonderful and fantastic individuals that I bring forth to you day on and day off with every interview that I do. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Lázaro Herrera from Success Innovation. Bye bye. Thank you so much for watching another episode with Success Innovation. I hope that you learned so many valuable lessons that Skye Edwards shared with us. Her early beginnings, upbringing in a farm, the work ethic that she was actually instilled, how she managed to go to school, and what it took for her to actually discover from medical academy at the high school level to actually applying to various schools, and how she managed to decide to go to UCSD just on a visit. And off of that visit to the campus, she definitely opted to go there because she bought so much regalia there. And the wonderful path that UCSD has opened up for her, how she discovered chip, and what that really opened for her as far as the profession. This has been Lázaro Herrera from Success Innovation. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.